All right, welcome our new project vehicle. This is a Cherokee Classic. Don't even know what year model it is. Let's take a look here. It is a 99. So, bought this little guy. It is going to be one of the Jeeps in the Rock Your 4x4 stable. It's going to have a mild suspension, wheel and tire combo, some sliders, maybe re-geared, some differential stuff. The main goal is to be a daily driver. Things in pretty rough looking. Engine is locked up. So bought this thing with knowing that we would have to put an engine in it. So stay tuned for this build. All right, it's been a few weeks since we last looked at this. We got the engine out and made a mess of the shop here. Everything's just kind of gunky. We're gonna take it outside, pressure wash everything, clean everything off, and then make a list of everything we need to replace with the engine. There's lots of things that we did not disconnect, like the power steering. Nothing's leaking on that. It's full of fluid. The box is a little grimy. We're gonna put some degreaser and clean that off. But looking pretty decent. It's been a productive weekend. Got that engine all the way out and everything disconnected. Took a pressure washer with some purple power and really cleaned this thing up. This whole underside of the hood was just black, filthy. And like, for example, the steering gear box just was caked with grime and grit and all that sort of stuff. We're gonna dry everything off, make sure all these connectors are good and dry. I did put tape over the master cylinder booster and also covered up the connections for the ECM and made sure that I didn't focus water on the connectors like that. But we're gonna blow them out regardless, make sure everything's nice and dry, and get this thing back in the shop for some more teardown. All right, we have the Cherokee back inside the garage. Ended up deciding, since we're gonna do the suspension as well, just to take everything out. So it's been a pretty productive weekend. Got both axle assemblies out, every bit of the suspension. A few things to note here. On the inside or underneath, we've got an upper control arm bracket and a lower control arm bracket. Those are both going to be cut off since we're going to do a long arm upgrade on this. And let me show you one more thing that I found on disassembly. All right, so we've got the axles apart and went ahead, since we're going to probably be doing a double shear track bar mount. There used to be a track bar bracket that bolts right here. Cherokees and Grand Cherokees have that item. And one thing I found when disassembling this is, check out this bolt here. You can see where the rust was getting to that. So, you could have a fully built rig, and never have taken this bolt out, ever, and get on the trail one time, hit a rock with some speed or something to jolt that track bar, and it would shear those bolts off, and that bracket would be hanging out, and you really would be kind of stuck or have to rig it back up with some ratchet straps just to get it home. So it's little things like this when you start a project that you don't really know about and you'll find along the way. But here's the outside view of those control arm brackets right here. They're going to be cut off, and then we're going to have a unibody stiffener that we're going to weld on all the way down this unibody rail here. For those unibody stiffeners, we chose to go with Iron Rock Off-Road. So we were going to do the front and the mid section. These are probably a little bit thicker, maybe 1/8 inch, maybe a little bit thicker, maybe 3/16, I'm not sure. But it's going to stiffen up the body of this Jeep and give us something to support for sliders and suspension. Did pull the front bumper off. It's going to help us when we go back together with a different bumper. Also, it's going to give us a little more room when reassembling the engine and the powertrain. We did go ahead and get some of this stuff cut out of the way here. And so what we've done on this one side here is we got the control arm bracket ground and cut off. So it's smooth and ready to reassemble with those stiffeners. And we're gonna proceed with the other side. All right, so now we've got both these sides removed. We did a different procedure. This one over here, we ground the top of the rivets off and then pried the plate off. But as you can see here, it left holes where it pulled those spot welds out. The first side, what we did was we just ground the whole thing. So it took a lot longer, but looks a lot better. Although you won't see this, it'll be filled in with weld and then the plates will be covering that up. Just thought we'd share with you the difference in the two methods. All right, we're prepping these plates for the stiffeners with some Steelit. So what you're looking at is the back side of these plates. This one over here had some surface rust, so all of that was ground off, and then these were wiped dry with some brake cleaner. I guess that's the right thing to use, who knows. But anyway, we're gonna use Steelit Black on the back sides of these. That way, when they are mated to the Jeep, there's some corrosion inhibitors between them and the unibody of the Jeep. All right, so we've been welding for quite some time now. We've got these stiffeners welded to the frame down here. They go all the way down and come up here and meet the front section. Now, this front section was all one piece. So from right here all the way back here was connected, but I didn't have enough clamps to get the whole thing conformed, so I ended up cutting it in 3 pieces and then welding it back together. So we're still in the process of welding. There's lots of little slots that are cut in here that get welded in, but you can see here we've welded the perimeter of that one, and then we've welded it to the other one, and then gone around this hole here. But we're kind of in the middle of that right now. It's a very long and tedious process, but some of the welds don't look great, but we're going to put a nice couple of coats of Steelit when we're done, and should be pretty strong. So on the underneath side, you can see there's a little bit of a gap here, so we're gonna have to kind of pinch this together to get it to weld, so that it'll turn out like this side over here. This one actually fit a lot better down through here. So we've got that one welded. And then if you can see here, the bottom sides down through here are welded on these. And I didn't weld this one little section right here because there was a pretty good gap. So we're just need to make sure we get some paint deep in there. And we're considering maybe putting some seam sealer or something in there just to fill that void. But you can see it on this side as well, along that section. This is really, in my opinion, one of the most difficult things to weld because you're welding a real thin sheet metal to a pretty thick piece of metal. And then over here you can see, this one actually looks pretty decent down through there, but some of it doesn't. But it's gonna do the job, and it's gonna be strong and give this unibody some strength. So we'll press on and get the rest of this welded up. All right, it's been a long day. We've got these completely welded up now. And one thing we did was we went and got a tube or actually a couple of tubes of seam sealer. And you can see here where we had a little sizable gap in some of this floor panel area. We put seam sealer in there, and we're gonna let that dry and come back and paint this whole area tomorrow with some Steelit. All right, so we've got a couple of coats of Steelit Black, and we went ahead and painted up under the fender well here. Got all that done, and we're kind of focusing while we're waiting on paint to dry on some engine and other mechanical things. We're going to start addressing some issues, and the one major one was the headliner was falling down. So got that pulled out. I'm gonna pull these seats out and send the headliner and the seats over to my pal Matt at Morgan's Auto Trim down in Lenore City. So to get this headliner out there, you got to take all this trim around the perimeter, which removed these corner pieces here that key into the dash. So you had to take that much off the dash to get these pieces out because they had a flare that came out underneath this trim. But that's all out. Probably going to go ahead and throw a heater core and evaporator core in it. Maybe look at some other things to replace, but let me let you see this headliner. Nasty. So most of the fabric was still attached, but I pulled it off because it was kind of hanging down like 2 feet, and it's just gross. So anyway, he's gonna scrape all the foam off, put us a new fabric on there, and I can get this put back in because this thing takes up a lot of room here in the shop. We are lucky that we have the sound bar in the back, and considering going ahead and putting a couple of decent speakers in the back while we have it this far apart. But everything is in good shape on the board. It's still got all of its shape and rigidity and all that. So looking forward to getting that back in there for sure. So kind of in the middle of pulling the interior out, and you can see here, carpet's pretty nasty. So we're probably gonna end up getting carpet for this thing. And then I did notice when taking the seats out, the console moves. And I remember, I think it's JCR, somebody makes a bracket that goes down in the bottom of here underneath, and it ties this thing in. So it's a common failure on these to break. And there's also a little latch here that I think we can get to replace as well, so that can clip in. Here the seats are out, and you can tell this is the driver's cushion, how collapsed it is. So Matt's gonna build up the cushion on this one so it'll match the passenger seat, and it's in good shape. So anxious to get that upholstery work done and get these back in. It's gonna look good. All right, now that console is out, I'll show you this piece I was telling you about. This is the support piece underneath the console, and it's held on with 3 screws, and the little tab is broken off the bottom corner there. So with that piece broken, this whole thing just wobbles. Even though these 2 screws are tight on the console, it just lets it wobble. And something else to note, like when you have a project like this, I take some Ziploc bags, and it may be a month before I get this thing back together or more. So I just label those console screws. That way you can remember where things come from. So I believe we're gonna move on next to this dash and go ahead and get the entire carpet out so we can clean this thing out good, and then get the dash out so we can replace the evaporator core and the heater core. Carpet's out. There's a good clean floor pan on the driver's side. Passenger side looks pretty good in the back. There is some rust though up here on the front. So we probably had a water leak at some point, but I've broken up most of this, and we're gonna scrape that and sand it, and then put some sort of rust conversion primer on there to convert that rust over, and then that way we can paint this area just to prevent it from getting any worse. All right, we've cleaned up the floor a little bit. It looks a lot better, and we've got the dash out. So what we're gonna do is go ahead and put a evaporator core and a heater core in it. And this does not have to come out to do that. You can pull it away slightly and sneak it in there, but I wanted just to get all of this off so I can clean all the dust and dirt off of this and just kind of look at everything, check the condition of it, and then replace anything that might need to be replaced. Okay, so we've unpackaged everything for the lift kit here, and what this is a 4-inch Iron Rock off-road long arm. So it's got a 3-link front with new leaf springs in the rear. We didn't go with sway bar disconnects just yet because we want to just get this thing on the road and get it driving good. We've pre-assembled the sway bar links, the track bar bushings. We need to go in here and assemble these flex joints for all of the control arms. But we've got some 4-inch coils, they're trail tamer shocks, and this 3-link long arm with track bar. And the rear consists of new leaf springs and shackles. Here's the wheel and tire we chose for this project. This is a 15x7 black Rhino unit wheel and a 33-1050 Grabber X3 general tire. It's a good looking tire. It's got a good looking tread pattern. We've used these on several customers' vehicles at the shop, and we're gonna see how it works out on this daily driven vehicle for us. On the 4.0s, it's an inherent problem. You can change these manifolds out or these headers. This one actually, you can see where it's cracked. That crack goes all the way around to the other side. So we'll probably put a Banks stainless header on here, and you should have years of problem-free use out of that. So these factory ones are pretty typical for cracking and causing leaks. So we got the engine to the Poject Cherokee to the shop, and Drew took the head off of it, and we found this. So now we've got to find a block and a head and go from there. Stay tuned.